I will start with a presentation of like what GründerVirus is. It's in German. I will speak in English, I think. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right, Facebook, we are online. Welcome to the 11th GründerVirus virtual hangout. Before we start with our today's guest, Ida, I will talk briefly about what GründerVirus is about. Okay, I will translate on the fly from German to English. So GründerVirus is about ideas, diversity, and growth. It's a local startup community, and it's a community for founders, built by founders. So we want to bridge the gap and provide relevant knowledge, not some general knowledge that you can acquire from just by a Google search. And we want actually to motivate, activate, and iterate together. So motivate by bringing speakers who have built companies, who know how to build companies, who are building startup ecosystems or innovation ecosystems. How can we bring the components together so that things are operating and activated? And also we are open to discuss on your ideas, your products, so you can iterate on your product. We are a community, so we are a team. We operate in a virtual setting, but also in a local setting. So you're free to join the community and shape it with us. My name is Serghei. I will be the host for today. And today we have Ida, and we'll talk about many topics, I believe. We'll talk about building ecosystems. We'll talk about digital Europe, which is kind of a high flyer in general. So there's a lot of criticism that Europe is not digitized enough, and she brings in the perspective of a millennial. So 3 topics in one hangout. Hi, Ida, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for the introduction. Really nice to be here today.
Great. Ida, we start every time with a brief introduction, like who are you, where you're from, and most importantly, why are you excited or passionate about building ecosystems?
Cool. So yeah, I'm actually originally from Finland, so way up Northern Europe. But then I haven't lived there for I think 8 years now. I first moved to the Netherlands to study business there, and then I specialized in entrepreneurship. After that, I then moved to work in the corporate world. I was working for HP, the company that makes printers and computers. I was there in supply chain project management. So a very, very different world from the startup world. And that was a really interesting experience. I learned a lot, especially about how really big organizations and systems work. It's pretty complicated if you want to manage the production and the whole supply chain of bringing lots and lots of printers and computers from Asia to Europe and the Middle East and Africa. So that's what I was doing then for around 3 years. But then I always knew that the startup world is what I'm passionate about. I like the energy and I like the passion of the startup world, and also the energy of really making things happen. So it's not just about talking, but it's really about taking action and creating your vision and creating our future. So that's why actually a bit more than a year ago, end of 2019, I then quit my job at HB to move into the startup world. I was first working for a co-working space in Switzerland, and then during the pandemic switched to a fully remote role of working from wherever I want to for a company called Entnest. Entnest is an online digital platform and community for different players of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So I now work there, but then also offer my own services on a freelance basis. And I'm right now based in Berlin. I think I didn't mention that. So also based in Germany, actually. I also speak a little bit of German, but with business topics, I prefer to stick to English.
Okay, cool, no problem. So maybe for people who are not aware of what Entnest is, maybe you speak a couple of words about the this. Yes. About Entnest. What is it? What kind of platform is it?
Yes. So as I said, Entnest is a platform that brings together different people somehow involved in the entrepreneurship world. The founder is a guy called Johan. He's based in Switzerland, and he started his own company. But then while he was doing that, he realized that as an entrepreneur, especially in the beginning, you need different types of support. You need investors, you need partners. Maybe you're sometimes lonely and you would like to meet other founders who are going through the same challenges as you are. However, if you're new to the startup world, it might be difficult to find these different people and resources and knowledge because it's all spread out across the internet in different communities. And that's why he created Entnest to be a digital platform that brings together all of these different types of support and entrepreneurs, so that as an entrepreneur, you could find all the support and connections that you need in one place, on a platform that's more built on values of collaboration and trust. So really a community that helps one another rather than just selling and trying to make money for yourself.
Cool. Quick question. What is the most valuable help for the network? Well, have you observed a pattern that what everyone, not everyone, but most of entrepreneurs are looking for? What kind of where is the demand side in the network, if you can share?
Yeah, for sure. I think a really common one is of course funding. That's what people talk about a lot. You always need funding. Everyone is lacking money. However, what I've also noticed is that very often it's the money is actually the result of some other underlying problem. Because especially in Europe, different countries in Europe, there is early stage capital available. However, it's often if you don't get access to that, there's something else that's wrong. Maybe your pitch deck is not good. Maybe you haven't figured out your business model. Maybe you haven't spoken to your customers. And then if you try to address those root causes, then it makes it easier for you to get access to that capital.
That's a great answer, I think. There's a lot of complaining about capital and funding, but it's actually not a problem if you figure out what need you're going to address and you know how to frame it, how to communicate it. You know, this, I like the quote by Mark Andreessen. It was a conversation between Mark Andreessen and what was the name? So he wrote the book on disruption. You probably know him, the Innovator's Dilemma. I forgot his name.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I also can't come up with the name right now.
Yeah, so it was, I always recommend to watch this video. It's great. And there, the Andreessen, like Mark Andreessen said, capital is abundant. It's the opportunity that is rare. So I like this perspective because if you have like funding, you complain about funding, or you have the feeling, or someone complains like, I need funding, I can get it. It's probably, I think there are two issues. It's either you cannot communicate it, or you're not addressing a problem. Would you agree to that?
Yes, and I would maybe add a third component. Sometimes you might have the even if you have the problem, and even if you're communicating well, I think you also need the business part. The business model needs to make sense. The unit economics need to make sense. And that's especially a problem that I see more on the social entrepreneurship side. People are willing to solve problems, but the fact is that even if you want to make a positive impact and do something good, you need to generate money to sustain yourself. You need to have something somewhere where the money is coming from, so that you can take care of yourself and your own life, so that you can then give more to other people.
Totally agree. Yeah. I totally agree. We discussed it before the live stream that especially in social entrepreneurship, the business part or the business model is not really developed in many teams. What I observed, that's why they have troubles to generate revenues or to raise funds. All right, great. You talked about components, and just for people who just joined on Facebook, we have Ida. She's passionate about startup ecosystem or innovation ecosystem building, and today we'll talk about ecosystem components, startup ecosystem components from the perspective of a millennial and in the digital age. Super exciting. You talked about components. So you also are very active on LinkedIn. I really love your videos. So Ida makes, like, if you are on LinkedIn, follow her. She makes great videos, great content on specific topics, and compresses the knowledge in digestible videos. So you learn a lot from her. And her recent video was about ecosystem component. And I think we can discuss it briefly before we go into the topic of your perspective from a millennial perspective and digital Europe.
That sounds good. So maybe I don't know. This is the part where I was thinking if I should share the slides just to make it a little bit more visual.
Feel free. Otherwise, I have the components prepared from a video. But if you have slides, please share with us.
I'll go through it really quickly. I'm myself a very visual person, so I always like to, you know, work on that level as well if there's other visual people. So I'll just breeze through it. I always like to start with why. First of all, why is it important to support entrepreneurship and have these ecosystems? And for us ecosystem builders, it might be a stupid question. It's obvious, but it's not obvious for everyone. The really black and white reasons for why we need to support this is because entrepreneurship contributes to the economy. It solves problems of the society, and it's also the future of work. The way in which we work is changing. So these are some reasons for why it's important. However, supporting startups isn't easy. We often have these numbers of 9 out of 10 startups fail. Actually, that's not true. It depends on which numbers you look at. It's not necessarily 90%, but the point is a lot of startups fail. And if you look at the success rate of entrepreneurship, in the 1950s, there wasn't a lot of startup support available, but a lot of startups failed. In 2010s, there was a lot of startup support available, but we still see a lot of startups failing. So the point is that we're not really learning how to support entrepreneurship because there's still a lot of them fail. And basically the solution to that has been the ecosystem. Because then if you start thinking about it, what is that magic pill for success? It's not just the funding. It's also not just having a supportive legal framework. It's also not just having smart people and knowledge. That's also not by itself enough. But you need a combination of a lot of people. You need the smart people, you need knowledge, you need the legal framework, funding, and markets and business support. And this combination of the different things that support the ecosystem and entrepreneurship, that's the ecosystem. So basically you need all of these things to get to successful startups. So here you can see the different components. This is based on research from Daniel Eisenberg, a scholar who has been looking into entrepreneurship, but there's of course a lot of other theories about it as well, which include other components or additional components in addition to these 6.
Right. Should we dissect each of, like, dive into each of them?
Sure, we can do that. So
okay,
any questions?
Yeah, I have many questions. Yeah. Like I have a lot of questions, but the first question would be like you presented that it's not one factor, it's not a specific issue. If we solve it, then we have an ecosystem. So the question is, what is the reason that people still don't get this idea that it's a multiple, that there are many components that need to operate together? Why don't, like, or when you try to convince people, how to communicate it so they get this idea? Because what I see is that we are trained also at school to linear thinking. Here we talk about systems. It's not linear, so it's kind of difficult to say if you optimize this variable, you'll get there or you get there. So it's more a dynamic structure. Maybe you have a couple of ideas how to communicate it, or what was your experience in communicating about ecosystems?
Well, I would say that the first thing is that there's not a lot of awareness about this topic. It is a rather new phenomenon, which hasn't been around for that long, and because of that, it's also not included in any traditional business education, for example. So I don't think that it's necessarily that difficult of a concept then when you think about it, but it's just, we just don't know about it. We just don't talk about it. But in the recent years, I think awareness of this topic has also gone up a lot. If you look at what people are talking about right now, there's a lot more talk about ecosystems, ecosystem building than 5 years ago, for example, I would say.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, it seems to be also. I was actually strongly influenced by Victor Hwan's book, The Rainforest, which kind of I could not stop reading because, well, it explains so much what I experienced as an entrepreneur, what I experienced as a community builder. It explained also a lot like this. So he separates the agriculture from rainforest. Kind of there are two worlds, and that they're not compatible. So it was kind of, okay, that's kind of a complex thinking, a different type of thinking. It's not a linear thinking, and you need to bring those components together, and trust plays an important role. Okay, cool. So let's dive into the components. Which should we start it? I think let's start. Let's make it clockwise. Let's start with business support.
Okay, great. I think a lot of these will be pretty self-explanatory for anyone who is a little bit familiar with startups. What's meant with business support is that, of course, in addition to the core business, maybe you're a salesperson, you will still need to figure out, the legal stuff and accounting and maybe someone to support with marketing. So you need these supportive services, or, for example, accelerators that help you get started on those other topics surrounding your core business.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the next one is human capital. So that's, of course, academic knowledge, skilled workforce, serial entrepreneurs. That's where, for example, universities play a really big role. If you look at the like entrepreneurial hubs, there's often some really big university or big school that is a supply of workforce and people that have ideas.
Yeah. Let's pause there, because I think human capital is super critical. Do you have like ideas or your experience? What is the attractor of human capital? Because I observed that very talented people are kind of not attracted by geography generally, except they go do a planning for holidays and for vacation. But generally, it's not that I think I need to go to Berlin because it's Berlin. Because I need, like, as an entrepreneur, I'm attracted to Berlin because of certain factors. So, like, what are the attractors of human capital in entrepreneurship? Maybe you have some data or experience in that.
So one thing that comes to my mind first is that maybe it's just the reputation of different ecosystems and cities. A very not data driven, maybe not even that rational approach, but people have these images in their head. You have this feeling that, like, oh, if you want to be a tech entrepreneur, you need to go to Silicon Valley. because they have this cool image of that's the place to be. Or if you're an ambitious finance person, you need to go to London because London has the reputation of being the center for that. So I think the reputation and the image that cities build for themselves plays a really big role. And that's, I think, why you also see a lot more European cities now paying more attention to their country branding and city branding.
Exactly. It's, yeah, I like your answer, because reputation is something that you deliver consistently, that you communicate clearly over a longer period of time. Okay, that's great answer.
Yeah.
Cool. Like like what I observed, maybe because I think human capital is so important. What I observed also that, for example, tech people or scientists are not attracted by financial incentives. They're more attracted by solving problems. And the harder the problem is, the bigger the impact, the higher the attraction is. So I see like cities that brand themselves as something, and I would say, who are you communicating to? Are you trying, like you have like, let's say we have an university, it's very well in medicine. So like, do you communicate this to attract doctors, like scientists, or like, you know what I mean? Like the communication, why should they come there, even though they're assuming their reputation is not built? Why should they come there if it's not about solving a problem?
Yeah, I think that's a super important point that you're bringing up. Sort of like that reason. What is it that really drives you as a founder or a developer? What is it that you're really looking for? And you need to start by understanding those needs, those wants, that purpose, if you want to communicate to the people.
Yeah.
And I think
I remember.
What's important there, I think, is is of course having opportunities, having a lot of opportunities for doing that in different ways. So for example, if you are for example a university, that you not only have the interesting courses, but then you maybe have some extracurricular activities, maybe you have some big companies around it, you have opportunities also outside of the studies and after the studies for doing interesting things, because that's then also how you keep the talent after the universities. Not that they come there and they study and then they go away, but they're like, wow, there's so much stuff that's going on here. I want to stay here because I just don't want to give up all these opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like there's something going on and I want to be part of it.
Yeah.
This excitement. There's also like Daniel Pink, it's still on my reading list. There's so much stuff on my reading list. Like he wrote that financial incentives kill creativity. Like it's not an opinion, like it's scientifically proven. Very interesting. So human capital, solving problems, creativity, being part of something bigger where things are going on. But let's switch to finance. It's also an important aspect for business.
Definitely. I mean, you can't escape the financial part. I think that's pretty clear. What I would maybe add here, which is something that not all like cities or ecosystems think about, is that you need to look at also the different stages and the different funding instruments. So it's not just, oh, we have one VC, we're good. No, you need to look at what comes before the VC. Are there like subsidies available? Are there microloans available? Are there business angels? How to find those opportunities for capital. VC funding is not the only option, and it's not always the best option for all founders. So looking at the whole stage, going from the really small ones to then the bigger, further series rounds.
Yeah, totally agree with this stage aspect. Like I miss often the discussion when a project or an ecosystem project is launched, etc., that they don't map the startup journey. Right, so you have ideation, you have a prototyping, you have a product, then you have funding to you start a company business that you want to scale, that you want to exit, like, and the mechanics in each phase are totally different.
Yeah, and I think that links back to what you were saying about that systems thinking. and looking at the bigger picture rather than just looking, like a small part of it in a linear way. We're missing actors or players who would be looking at it from a higher level. Like, whose job is it to map that system from the beginning to the end? It doesn't really fall into anyone's lap, and nobody is directly benefiting from that. I mean, if I map that whole journey, then who's going to pay me for doing that? What do I get out of it? It's like a new role that we're sort of now only figuring out that we need to create and look at it from that higher perspective.
So would you say it's the role of ecosystem builders?
Sorry?
Would you say that this role should be filled by ecosystem builders?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So finance, super important. So everyone, like what I tell people is that if you want the success stories, the exits, like you need to map up the startup journey, the founder journey. If there's disconnection, like it's just disconnected. Like if there's a certain stage, the growth stage or the startup phase cannot be funded, like they go somewhere else. Okay. The good people go somewhere else. Other, like less good people just stop. All right. So let's talk about culture. I think that's a big topic, and I would like please, no filter. Like what is missing in Europe? I think that's a big topic. Saying like Europe is not risk is risk averse. So what type of culture is important in startup or innovation ecosystems?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the word risk and innovation. That's also what I put on the slides. I think those are really key words here. There needs to be socially acceptable and admired to take risks and to fail. And traditionally in Europe, that has not been the case. We prefer stability, and it's a little bit embarrassing if you spend a lot of years on a startup and then you just fail. It's not admired as it is more in the States and in Silicon Valley maybe. So that has traditionally been the case, but I think it's slowly changing. Because what I think is important in changing that culture and the status quo around entrepreneurship is successful examples, like stories of people who have done that and then reached like a really high social status in the society. They become people who we admire, and then especially if failures are a part of their journey, it becomes also more socially acceptable and something that you look up to. So I think it's really important that we've been having more of these success stories and big startup names in Europe as a part of changing that culture.
Yeah, totally agree. So what I experience, especially in biotech, like I follow like the American thought leaders, also England, but then I ask myself, aren't there biotech entrepreneurs in Germany? Then I research, and actually there are many biotech entrepreneurs who are very successful, but they are not visible.
Oh, that's a super interesting point, and I can see that. I mean, it's not, if you look at German people, for example, it's not traditionally about the German culture that you would be going around social media telling people how amazing you are. The Germans aren't really like that.
Yeah, but it's kind of a negative impact on the entrepreneurial culture, like entrepreneurial spirit in the country, because like before the COVID crisis and BioNTech Pfizer collaboration, nobody, like I would say, probably almost nobody knew about BioNTech and what they do with mRNA vaccines. So I knew this company. I knew also CureVac, but the founders were not visible. They have social media profiles, but they are not connected with universities. They don't communicate. And I think we, especially in Europe, we need to change that. Totally agree. We need this success stories who talk about like what are the mistakes that we shouldn't do as founders, because we would run into troubles. And I see there a gap. I would like to discuss with those people like face to face, like we do, But so far there was not an environment to do that.
Would you say that that's changing now as a result of the pandemic and everything a bit more online?
Not really. It's kind of this mentality that if I have achieved something, I have a running company, I shouldn't brag about it. But to me, it's not. It's sharing experiences. It's not bragging about success.
Yeah. Because I feel like it's interesting that you say that, because I, on the other hand, have felt like there has been an increase in dialogue and people sharing their stories and talking. I've been pretty active online, just expanding my network and seeing what's going on. And I mean, every week there's some sort of panel discussion or event or networking or whatever. So I do see quite a lot of entrepreneurs active there. But where I see that there might still be, what we're still missing from that dialogue is those entrepreneurs that are really, really focused on what they do, really working hard to make things happen. So some of the very successful ones, because I think that they feel like this is not a priority of theirs. You know, they have so many other things. So then they're like, what should I spend my time on? Well, it's not social media. It's not some panel discussions and sharing my story, because I need to focus on my company and get stuff done in order to be successful. And this is not perceived as something important.
Yeah. So my view is a bit biased on pharma and biotech. So like, I think tech has increased definitely by the pandemic, the presence of tech founders online, but what I miss is the intellectual honesty, that people say how things are. It's kind of a barrier in European culture. We express things too politically correct, so we don't know. But like, entrepreneurship is hard, and I think we should be honest. Like, things are hard, and communicate it this way.
Definitely agree, and really happy to hear that there's other people who think that way as well, that we need more honest dialogue between the founders.
It's a very pragmatic perspective, because some programs, soft landing programs, are too soft, and when you enter the market, you just get hit if it's not relevant, if you're not strong enough. Sometimes if you're not pushy and like a bit aggressive maybe with your market launch, etc., then the market will hit you hard, and then then you definitely fail. So that's a background. It's like I'm also a martial artist, so like, you don't get into the boxing ring or some other fight without training.
That's true. Yeah,
you have to train somehow. Okay, I think culture is very exciting, and I think we need to connect like human to culture. Like, totally agree, be successful with the community that is where ideas emerge. Okay, so let's talk about markets, the hard hit if you're not prepared.
Exactly. I think that was a perfect bridge to the next one. You of course need someone to sell your products to, and it's a lot easier to do that early stage validation of your product or service if you have those first customers nearby. You don't have to immediately go somewhere else where you don't understand the culture, but you can start playing around, understanding the markets and your customers right there at your home base. And then what comes after that is the networks for growth. So maybe your home market, like, you know, coming from Finland is not a market where you're going to build like $1 million company, because it's a very small one. So you then need to also
how large is Finland? I think that's small, actually. How many people do?
Yeah, it's pretty small. We have like 5.5 million people.
Okay,
Yeah. So rather small, and that's why you then need also connections to new markets. If you want to build a big unicorn, you need to then know, okay, which markets to expand to next, and have the people who can help you get access to those markets.
Yeah, I think that's a good setting to talk about Europe and digitization. I mean, there might be barriers, language barriers, regulatory barriers to expand in Europe. So what would you recommend for for ecosystem builders, like for Finland, it sounds like when you start there, you need to think globally from day one, and like internationalization has become a critical topic in order to build successful ecosystem. So what would you recommend to ecosystem builders so that the digitization and European fragmentation kind of is balanced in terms of building successful ecosystems?
Well, I think the first thing is that like a mindset shift in the minds of the founders and the people, because I think that most founders are still not thinking at that international level. So for example, if I think about Finland, a lot of the discussions that I've had with founders there, they say that no, we shouldn't be thinking about Europe yet. That's like too big. We're still small. We need to try it out here in Finland first and only expand later. That's like a topic for later. And I think that mindset is, we can't be thinking that way anymore, especially if you're in a country like Finland, which is really small. Maybe in Germany, it's a bit different. Here you can start with the German market that's already like 10 times bigger than Finland, more than 10 times bigger than Finland, but are also there, like the downside of thinking too small in the beginning is that then you tailor your product or your service to that small market, and then you're going in this one direction, but then it might be harder to change that later on to adjust to a more international setting. Then you already built a national company, versus if you bring some more international experience in from an earlier stage, it might be easier to then adjust to different cultures and notice those barriers in other cultures earlier. So I think that the first thing that's needed is a mindset shift of thinking about, like, I'm Finnish, I'm building a Finnish company, to Europe as my home. I'm building like a European company, and realizing that the borders between different European countries are not as big as we think that they are. And I think this is coming towards, my perspective as an international millennial, how I see Europe as my home. It doesn't really matter if I'm in Germany or Switzerland. I mean, what's the difference? It's so easy to cross the borders, but people still don't think that way. And like Finnish people, they sometimes think that it's easier to expand to, again, Silicon Valley than Germany. And I think that's something that we first need to start changing, that mentality of people.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Yeah. So like couple of questions. How do you, like, if you see like two, maybe one meta and one more practical, when you have conversations, and you observe that they think too small, and I totally agree. If you build something for 2 years and it's not optimized for international expansion, then you probably have a hard time to pivot to international expansion. So how do you communicate this think big? Like it's easy to say think big, right? Address a larger market, solve bigger problems. But when you're in the conversation, how do you change their perspective? Do you have some?
I think one thing could be just making the foreign markets more accessible, so it doesn't feel like, oh, again, speaking from Finland as an example, so it wouldn't feel like, oh, Germany is so far away. Germany is like unattainable. It's a different culture, it's a different language, but breaking the barrier and making it seem more accessible, like bringing in someone from Germany to talk about it. And then when you meet those people in person, then you're like, oh, okay, it's not another world. It's similar people, similar problems. And then it starts feeling easier to think bigger. I think that could be one area. And that then comes to maybe more collaboration between different ecosystems, which is something that I'm really passionate about. Like, why aren't the Finnish accelerators speaking with the German ones, or the German ones with the Spanish ones? Why aren't there more pan-European events or knowledge sharing that would break down these barriers? These barriers that are in our minds that are not even real.
Yeah. So the second more pragmatic question would be actually is how to connect them. Like a regional accelerator is only focused on their language, on their region, and like they're not connected. What would be your advice for ecosystem builders or institutions that build ecosystems, or are there like stories or collaborations where you've seen that cities begin to interact, so you have create a flow of knowledge and sharing experience? I like your example, like bring someone from Germany to Finland, or like set up a video conference and discuss it, right? So it's actually very easy.
Yeah. I would say that ecosystem builders play a really, really important role there. Because as we were talking about earlier, it should, I think, be their role to map that process of the different players, both for their cities, but then also starting to think on an international level. I think as an ecosystem builder in Europe, you should not only understand the players in your city or your country, but have an idea of who are the important players in the other cities, and then start making introductions. So being a little bit aware of what's going on where, and then when you see that there could be an overlap somewhere, then making introductions between those people. I now forgot what the original question was, but I hope that answered it.
Yes, you answered it. So
Yeah.
like, what are the tactics for ecosystem builders should consider to so they connect? What are the benefits? While you are talking about some ideas of exporting startups, like if you say you can export and connect, sometimes it's just some wording. But what you say is that having this 360 view of what is happening in the innovation, in other innovation ecosystems, increases the probability that you will get this fit.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of missed opportunities for synergies and collaboration, because there's just so much going on. So it's hard to find the really relevant players. Like for example, I'm sure that in most European countries, there are companies that specialize in soft landing programs in those countries. Like a company that helps foreign companies start businesses in the Netherlands. You know, they help with everything to do with Dutch administration, Dutch cultural adjustments, all of those things. But do the companies that are supporting startups in, I don't know, Czech Republic and Austria and Spain, do they know that there's a company in the Netherlands that specializes in helping companies come to the Netherlands? I mean, that would be a perfect fit for those two to collaborate, but they just don't know that they exist. And that's why you need these pan-European ecosystem builders who can start making those connections.
Yeah, totally agree. Cool. Let's go to the kind of the sixth component, a policy.
Yes, so the policy, that's then where the government's institutions come in. What is the legal framework and government support for entrepreneurship? And here you could name like a very, very extreme example of a system that's not supporting entrepreneurship is if you have some sort of totalitarian system where you cannot trust that you build a business. You know, like if you start your business, then maybe the government is going to implement some new law that's going to take over your business, and you're going to be totally bankrupt or go in jail. That's like the very extreme example. You cannot have entrepreneurship in a society where you can't trust that you will receive benefits for starting a business. And then, of course, the optimal version then is that it's not only beneficial, but it's made very easy. So then this is, I think, something that Europe is dealing with right now, is how can we make it easier for people to start companies? How can we reduce the bureaucracy, both in starting companies, but then also in the taxation system, also in freelance work, part-time work. I know that the German government was also recently thinking about topics like equity, how to own equity in companies and how to get that buyout, you know, payments for the work that you've done. So topics like that.
Yeah, it's a big barrier from our own experience, the regulation in Germany for building employee stock options.
Yeah,
it's a big deal. It's stupid. Telling openly, it's a stupid regulation. It's you reduce incentives from startups. Okay, you can solve it by virtual programs, but it's not that you feel part of the company, right? You don't own the stock, you own an option. But what's your opinion on this? Opinion on starting a company in 24 hours, like registering a company in 24 hours, and Germany blocked it, right? So it was, I think last week, I read it in the feed that there was a discussion in the European Commission, but like Germany blocked it because they think it will increase economic criminal acts. I don't know what's the right word for it. Would you say that 24 hours, like starting a company, registering a company in 24 hours is a good option?
I'm not going to say a yes or no answer to that one, but I'll elaborate a little bit more on what I think. In general, one thing that I have to say is that I do like a lot of the European regulation. I think it's good that there is regulation, and regulation is needed. And that's it's of course sometimes in some situations a barrier for Europe, a downside, but in other situations it is our strength. In areas like sustainability and data privacy, it's important that we have those things because that sets us apart and creates standards as opposed to other continents. So I do believe that some level of regulation is needed and is also good. And in this case, I haven't looked into the details. So that's why I also don't know a yes or no answer to this. I think there needs to be a balance. Maybe 24 hours is too extreme. Maybe they had some good reasons for there was some level of something missing. Maybe we also don't need it to be 24 hours. I mean, for me, if I start a business, it's fine if it takes a week. But then if it takes like 6 months, that's too much. So trying to find a balance.
It reflects also my position this side. I think Germany made a good job. I don't think you need 24 hours. I think it's okay to have 3 to 7 days. And you need to have the right things in place when you start a company officially. All right. So maybe you have one example of a policy where you say, okay, they've done a great job.
Well, I think actually a lot of European countries, I personally have some experience with Finnish, German, and Dutch setting up a company, either myself or through friends. And I think all of them have done a pretty good job in making it pretty easy to get the company set up, especially if it's like a small startup. You're not trying to create a bigger company form in the beginning. I think that's made pretty easy in all of them. And another great example is, of course, Estonia. I think if you're familiar with the topic of ecosystems, we all know that Estonia has done a really great job with that. But what I would say is then another part, which some countries have done better than others, is the level of digitalization and how easily information is available. And there I would say that Germany has a lot of work to do comparing to some other countries.
Okay.
So for example, in like Finland and the Netherlands, if they're of course smaller countries, so that might make it easier, but information is just so easy to find. Like in Finland, everything is online. You search for something, you find the answers. It's easy, it's simple. Then I tried to Google something in Germany, how the bureaucracy works, and everything I find is, please consult your tax advisor for this question. I'm like, no, I want to do it myself. It shouldn't be that difficult. But it's really hard to find the right sources of information in Germany, even if in the end it would not be that difficult.
Okay. Yeah, it reflects probably the experience of many startups and ecosystem builders, and we should continue to connect the dots.
Maybe I can now stop sharing my screen.
I think I like the slides a lot, so it gives the right frame. As a last question, maybe a bit, I like this quote because it gives a different perspective. So it goes like this. A cluster is a description of a phenomenon, not a prescription for policy.
One more time, I need to process. A cluster is?
There is a trend to create clusters,
Mm-hmm.
like for innovation ecosystems. So a cluster is a description of a phenomenon,
Mm-hmm.
not a prescription for a policy.
Yes, I like that. I like that a lot.
So okay, I also like it a lot because I see policies and they say, okay, we'll have in Aachen this type of cluster, and and they start to build, and they like have many problems, barriers, but still they communicate as it is, and then maybe people are attracted to that, and then they're disappointed. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There was also an extreme example where Malta was positioned as one of top fintech ecosystems, and then many entrepreneurs arrived, and it was dysfunctional.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And I think that's actually, now that you bring that up, I think it links back to the reputation and branding of cities that we were talking about earlier. And I feel like that might become a problem at some point, or maybe it's already becoming a problem, that more companies, more startups and more cities are paying attention to that and doing a lot of the branding stuff, but maybe they're only focusing on that superficial branding rather than actually implementing the policies in place for that, because we see the positive impact of creating that hype around it. It's so easy to brand yourself as something. You just need to talk to the right reporters and have an article on Sifted about how great you are, and talk to a few other people, and then everyone thinks that you're the new place to go. But that's the easy part. But the real work is implementing those the right structures and changing the policies.
okay, yeah, totally agree. And we had also an interaction when you posted this video, and I think I wrote that we should add like the links between them, and I describe it as speed, how fast things are actually. Okay.
Wait, I think I have another slide that links to that a little bit.
Okay.
So like these different components need to communicate. So it's not important to have them, but I think this is what links to the thing that you said about speed. There needs to be something that connects the dots and makes things move fast. And in my opinion, they could be things like accelerator programs, startup events, maybe NGOs, serial entrepreneurs, and online networks to bring some vibrancy into that.
Cool.
I don't know if this addresses what you wanted to add, or.
Yeah, it's just like how fast are things happening. So my experience was, it's just the experience. Like in Europe, if I want to meet a VC, like I need weeks, right? An formal email, etc. My experience was in the States. I know someone. This person asks, connects me, and within 2 days, I'm in the office.
Yeah.
Right. So things are happening much faster, and you're much faster in the conversation where you can figure out whether it's a fit, do you want to make business, collaborate, or not.
Yeah.
So I think this removing barriers, creating trust, so things can happen much faster, so people meet faster. And I think like startup events, accelerators, networks, communication of serial entrepreneurs are those catalysts. That's great slide.
Would you say that that's also a cultural thing, with how fast things are moving, and if it takes weeks to get back to an email, or if you're immediately like yes or no?
I would say following. There's a lot of discussion about European culture and entrepreneurship. My current opinion is, if you're not responsible for something, then you blame the culture. Like we have so many problems to solve. And if you blame the culture and don't attack the problems, like don't solve the problems, then it says something more about human nature. You're lazy, you're complacent. So that's my current opinion. If they I don't want this European culture discussion. If you don't feel responsible for our world, for our society, then please go ahead and blame culture. But if you feel responsible, do it.
How about understanding that cultural ways of thinking might be the root cause, but then also tackling those So you're saying, yes, it is the culture, but I'm willing to be a person who changes that.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it links also to the title of our talk today, is that as a millennial, you travel a lot. You see so many cultures. So you like having this multicultural perspective, like it frees you from this narrow cultural frame, right? You can switch much faster. For example, like you probably, I don't know whether you think in different languages. I can think in different languages, and it gives me different perspective because there are different nuances in the languages.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I've never done that like consciously. I recognize that I think a bit differently in different languages, but I've never thought of utilizing it like, okay, let me think about this same problem in another language and see if I come up with a different solution. That's actually an interesting idea.
It opens something, right? And I think this is the millennial perspective, that you kind of not embracing the world, like they say, embrace the world. You just know the world is big, like there are different languages, different countries, different cultures. And I would say, like, for quality assurance, German culture is one of the best, like the Japanese culture. Like for when I also say that when we are brainstorming, I like to use English language because it's more fuzzy. It's not like German, pop, 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 each sentence. Like if you say, if it's not structured in German language, sounds like very creepy. So the power of language, of course, it's important. But I think if you're building for quality, like German culture is great. If you want to create innovation, you need to. I like to use English language and English words, like some words that are not existing words, like disruption or acquihire. There are no German word for that. So this startup jargon.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then coming back to what you said before, that's about, you know, rather changing the culture rather than blaming the culture. The way in which I think would be a nice way if people would work is that you recognize that there might be some cultural like that people have automatic ways of thinking. Like you, for example, taking the example that you said that it takes like weeks for someone to get back to you with the decision of if something is good or not. I think the reason why we might end up in a situation like that is because that person thinks that I need to do my job well and I need to consider all of these things and I need to talk to that person, but then questioning that, well, do you actually? Or then when questioning and disrupting these set ways of thinking in our heads and questioning those and saying, hey, maybe it's better for everyone if you make a decision in, 10 minutes on your feet so that things can move forward faster.
So what really, like, this conversation is super exciting. You have so much valuable contents on ecosystems. So what helped me in this, what you just said, what helped me is to differentiate between our physiology. So we are biological beings, and something that I don't know is perceived by my biology as a threat. Like, I don't like it. But you have kind of a frames, like, let's say it's hardware, right? So something I don't know, it appears as a threat, as unknown. And I have this feeling of rejection. But there's the software part where I can influence my thinking and rationalize what is happening and understand that this is the biology and kind of become more open and say, okay, let's, I have this biological reaction. It will adapt probably over time, but I'm open. So kind of differentiating that there are biological reactions by nature when I don't know something. A language, so this is about trust in the language, how people look like, dress code, skin color, like the professional background. Scientists don't trust finance people, right? So because they're greedy, they only want to make money, which is true, and it's not a bad thing probably. And it's probably not true because they are maybe interested in science, etc. So like understanding that we have biological reactions and pay attention, like be aware of that, but also having this ability of thinking what is actually happening. It's about awareness.
Definitely. And I feel like, yeah, I love it that you're saying that. And I wish more people were doing that and being aware of those things, because they are really hard to change. Like it's also a part of our nature, our way of thinking, that we take these mental shortcuts in order to come up with conclusions. And that relates to things also like, racism and gender equality and the biases in that area. So I think it's a really, really, really important and relevant topic.
Yeah. It's really important when talking about diversity. So people talk about diversity, they then talk about that we are biologically wired to react with fear to something we don't know. And we need to be aware of that. You know what's really painful, that we need to make a cut. But the discussion is super exciting. You provide so valuable content. So
super happy to hear that.
Yeah. So what is the best way to reach out to you if people want to connect? And we'll also make a post so the community and all the viewers can connect with you.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is the easiest. So if you follow GründerVirus on LinkedIn, you'll find me in the post there, and just feel free to reach out. I'm always open to having discussions. And also if you're interested in Endnest, so the company, the entrepreneurship platform that I'm interested in, it's on an invite-only basis. So you can't just Google it and create a profile, but you would then have to connect with me. And if there's a fit with our community, I can get you an invite. So that would be the way forward there.
All right, great. Ida, thank you very much. It was a super exciting session. Once again, you have great content and expertise on ecosystems. How many years have you put into this research and building up?
Not that much. I always feel like, I don't have as much experience as a lot of other people. So I've now been actively working in the startup world for only like 1 year or 1.5. But before that, as I said in my studies, I also specialize in entrepreneurship. So I looked at it a lot from the academic perspective, read a lot of articles and books. So that in combination of academic and then working experience, probably like 3 years.
Okay, cool. So the key message would be you can learn how to think like in ecosystems, like how to think in systems.
Yeah, I think it's about finding something that you're passionate about, and then you just start absorbing knowledge.
Yeah.
And then when you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work, and then you can grow fast.
All right. Good. Ida, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us at GründerVirus. We'll share more content from Ida as a follow-up, and you can connect with her. Thank you.
Thank you.